Alright, hi, and welcome to this brush guide. My name is Lane Brown, and I've been working to push Photoshop's brush system to its limits. My goal was simple: create the best, most useful, and well-organized brush pack for Photoshop that would serve my personal needs as an artist and illustrator. These are tools that, after countless iterations and fine-tuning, I've grown to love, and now I'm excited to share them with you. I must admit, this brush pack is huge. You'll find hundreds of brushes encompassing a full range of traditional and digital effects. Therefore, I've decided to break this pack up into its three major components. You'll find brushes for all things painting, including dozens of versatile brushes that I use for concept art and illustration. The next set is full of drawing tools, which includes brushes for all sorts of dry media such as pencils, charcoal, and pastels. And the final set is for inking, which is designed for those who love the look and feel of traditional ink, but might prefer the flexibility and editing power that digital provides. So you can pick these up individually based on your specific interest, or all together as part of the complete Master Pack. In this video, I want to guide you through the entire set, but I want to emphasize that this is not your typical brush pack. This is designed as a complete tool set for Photoshop. It's organized in a very thoughtful manner, so let me take you on a little tour so that you can get the most value out of it. Okay, so first off, let me show you how I like to set up my brush panel. One of the beautiful neat features of Photoshop is the brush organization system. So although this pack is absolutely massive, I have made great effort to organize the brushes in a logical way using the collapsible folders. Of these folders, I will typically only have 2 or 3 open at a time, so it's actually quite easy to navigate through them. It all depends on what sort of project I'm working on at the time. For example, if I'm just starting on a rough sketch, I only need the top folder open because it has all the essential tools for rapid development of an idea. As you can see at the very top, it contains the basic soft round, hard round, and classic round brushes. I think everyone is familiar with these, and you'll naturally reach for them all the time. I would have to consider them to be indispensable tools, and therefore they deserve their place here at the very top. The fourth brush, aptly named the All-Rounder, is one designed to give you a full range of effects. Typically, when I'm just starting on a painting, I simply want a versatile brush that I can block in shapes and manipulate edges quickly. This serves that purpose well and is reliable in all stages of painting. Then I have other essential brushes like the sketch pencil, the draftsman, and the concept marker, which are all very versatile drawing tools. The shape carver is great for both placing down and carving into shapes with hard edges. Notice that it's shaped like a palette knife. One of the key features of this brush pack is that many of the brushes utilize rotation control through the tilt of your pen. So you can very naturally change the angle of the brush shape while you make a stroke, based on how you hold your stylus. After using this feature for a while, I can't live without it. It allows me to place each stroke precisely how I want it. I'm actually surprised that this feature is so underused by artists. I've yet to find another brush pack that takes full advantage of it, perhaps because few know it's even there. It may take a few drawings to get the hang of it, but once you do, you'll have so much more control over your strokes. Up next, I have a scumble tool, which produces a beautiful, organic, all-purpose texture. This is a very versatile brush. It's the sort of thing that's not only good for adding gritty noise to a surface, but you could also use it for things like scattered leaves and particle effects. Really, the possibilities are endless. And speaking of which, The next brush creates a fine particle spray, which likewise has all sorts of uses. It's a quick way to generate texture, and I often like to mix it into an image that is otherwise too smooth or artificial looking. A bit of grain goes a long way. Next, we have a brush which produces a very soft edge stroke. Again, a very versatile brush with all sorts of uses. It's particularly great for atmospheric effects, such as when you're painting skies, clouds, mist, or anything where you need a subtle gradation of value. And the last of the essential tools is one that I love, particularly for the very start of my paintings. This produces a broad, gentle wash that can quickly cover your whole canvas with a satisfying tone. There's a bit of organic texture and subtle color variation in the mix. This is something I like to do with traditional canvases as well, because when you break the stark white of a canvas, it provides a very pleasing surface to work into. Alright, so those are the essential tools. As you can see, these few brushes alone can produce a full range of effects. And as a concept artist and illustrator, I know that sometimes it's better to keep the brushes to a minimum so that I can be very efficient with my time. That being said, I've designed all the other brushes to be just as useful, but they produce more specific effects. So it depends on the sort of project I'm working on as to which of the folders I have open. Oh, and let me just note that you can change the way the brush panel looks. Notice that I've set it to only show the brush shape icons and names. I turned off the stroke preview because I found that it's generally not an accurate representation of how the brushes actually look, and it also takes up far too much real estate on screen. I can easily identify my brushes by their names in combination with the shape icons. You can adjust the scale of each brush icon with the slider at the bottom of the panel. My personal preference is to have just 2 brushes on each row. It makes it easy to read each one, and this format fits my workspace pretty nicely. Now, you likely have other brush packs. I recommend that you just tuck them away in a folder underneath this pack. For one, you simply won't need them anymore. And 2, the fewer brushes that you have open at a time, the more condensed the brushes panel will be, making it much easier to scroll up and down your list. You can also right-click with the brush tool anywhere on screen to open a temporary view of the brush panel. This is very handy if you don't want it on screen at all times. I personally don't use it as much, but it has all the same functions and you can organize it in the same way. Alright, so I won't go through each and every brush, it would take several hours. Besides, I think part of the fun of a new brush pack is just exploring the different effects and possibilities yourself. However, I do want to guide you through all the categories because once you're familiar with where everything is, you'll be able to make the most of it. Okay, so first up is the Quick Kit. This is probably the folder that I spend most of my time in. You can think of these brushes as an extension of the essential tools. They're meant to produce a full range of effects so that everything you might need for a painting or illustration is right here at your fingertips. So throughout this pack, I wanted to make sure that each brush had its own unique character and that none were too similar. They're given names that I thought were interesting and would help to identify them quickly. The general organization of each folder is similar. You'll find the brushes which I use most frequently towards the top of the list, and more specific and situational brushes towards the bottom. Of course, feel free to rearrange these brushes and folders however you like. The organization, though, is the product of hundreds of hours of use and iteration, so I think you'll find that it works quite well. The next folder contains the line brushes. Now, you can of course create lines with any brush at a small scale, but these are fine-tuned for drawing. Some produce sharp, sleek lines, while others have more texture and character. The next category is the largest of all, broadly defined as the painterly brushes, and within you can see a series of subfolders. The legendary brushes are at the top. Each of these are mythic characters that will bring unique qualities to your work. I would not recommend that you try to use them all at once. Experiment with a few at a time so you can really get to know them. The second folder contains the master brushes. These are brushes inspired by many of my favorite artists from history, such as Anders Zorn, John Singer Sargent, John William Waterhouse, Ilya Repin, Nikolai Fechin, Frank Frazetta, J.C. Leyendecker, and so on. While these brushes may not bestow upon you the skill of such masters, they will certainly help you to paint with similar effects that would otherwise be difficult to produce. Next are a set of brushes with exceptionally pronounced textures. These are quite fun, especially when you need expressive and unexpected effects in your image. I think one of the major strengths of digital painting is the vast range of effects we can create with our brushes. We're not limited to bristles and palette knives, as great as those might be in the right hands. With this set, I wanted to explore both the natural-looking and surprising textures that only digital brushes can achieve. I've labeled the next group Natural Flat Brushes because they're flat and they produce some of the most natural-looking strokes. They're particularly good at capturing the look of gouache and acrylic. Some of these are inspired by masters like Sid Mead and Ralph McQuarrie, who utilize those mediums so well. I've found that wide, flat brushes like these are greatly enhanced by the rotation control I mentioned earlier. One benefit is that you don't need to scale your brush up and down very much because simply by rotating your hand, you can attack a detail at a sharper or broader angle. You really have to experience it for yourself. Alright, now watercolor might be one of the most elusive effects to replicate digitally. Its charm is largely in the spontaneous and somewhat unpredictable nature of it. Capturing the fluid look and feel is quite a challenge, but I discovered a few tricks. While you won't have drips running off your page, I'm genuinely surprised by how convincing these are. In the next major group, I have the mixer brushes. These are perhaps one of Photoshop's best features that I've yet to see matched by any other painting app. Essentially, they work just like regular brushes. However, they allow you to mix and blend colors in very interesting ways. Rather than picking a single color, you can sample from any area on your canvas the size and shape of your brush. This loads the brush with all the colors within that specific region. With this, you can produce surprisingly natural-looking effects. It allows you to blend colors already on the canvas with each stroke, much like traditional paint. As you can see, I have a series of subfolders here as well. The main group I want to point out, though, is the one with the blend and smudge mixers. Often I will use these in combination with the standard brushes. I've designed them to work as advanced blending tools so that you can push around and mix your pixels in all sorts of fun ways. Do make sure to rebind the shortcut key for the mixer brush. By default, it's the same as the standard brush. but with its own key, you can swiftly switch back and forth between the two brush tools. Alright, so that's all of the brushes designed for painting. Up next, I have the dry media brushes, which are the focus of the drawing set. These are inspired by the traditional tools that I love to use for drawing, starting with a rather large array of pencils. I consider pencils to be among the most versatile tools. You can quickly transition between fine lines and broad strokes, especially when taking advantage of the tilt and rotation control. You might recognize some of the names here. Quite a few of these pencils are inspired by artists I admire, such as Andrew Loomis, Ian McCagg, and Glenn Orbick, to name a few. Next up is the charcoal brushes. Again, these are designed to mimic the sort of charcoal that I enjoy drawing with traditionally. My goal with these sorts of brushes is not necessarily to fool the viewer into thinking that it's not digital, although that can happen. I find that if I apply the same approach and techniques with them, I can capture a practically identical look and feel. Alright, so now we come to the dirty ink set. Why is it dirty, you ask? Well, because it's all the fun of real ink combined with the advantages of digital editing. Some might even call it cheating. For me, I've found that working in black and white in an inking style frees up my mind to be more creative, especially when I can quickly fix mistakes and make edits. There's something very liberating about not having to concern myself with a full range of value or color. It's all just lines and shapes. And honestly, it's some of the most fun I've had, so I plan to work a lot more with this style in the future. Alright, and so following the same logic as before, at the top of the list you'll find the draft tools. These are designed for any sort of preliminary sketching you might want to do before committing to a full-on inking. The low opacity markers are great for ghosting in ideas very faintly. Then we have a set of line brushes. Here you'll find a Sharpie marker, ballpoint pen, quill, and all sorts of fun brushes for a variety of line qualities. The next folder contains what I call the prime inks. These are the main workhorses. They can give you very bold and dynamic strokes. Some of them aim for a very natural bristle brush look, while others are very sharp and fluid. Alright, next up are brushes which greatly emphasize their bristles. These are useful for when you want your strokes to have a strong sense of movement and gesture. Our eyes can better see the directionality of each stroke thanks to the visible trails left by the bristles. There are just so many features I'd like to share. For the sake of time, let me jump down to the diluted inks. I enjoy these because they contrast so nicely against the bold lines of other brushes. These will give you all sorts of translucent and wet effects. You can combine these with the wash and surface effect brushes. They're great for when you need to wash broad areas with tone or if you want to add some expressive splashes to an image. Most of the ink brushes are quite bold and sharp, so I felt it was important to balance that out with a variety of softer effects like these. Alright, moving on to the next major category, we have the special effects. You'll find all sorts of fun things like particle spray, spatter, canvas texture, thick impasto, and all sorts of abstract effects, which I think you'll have fun with. One of the major strengths of digital painting is the vast variety of effects we can create with the brushes, so I wanted to take advantage of that. I have all sorts of brushes for generating leafy shapes, natural-looking grass, ground textures, clouds, basically anything you might need for landscapes. I use these when I need to produce a quick concept or illustration. Sometimes you don't have time to place each individual leaf. These speed up the process while still looking painterly. And finally, that brings us to the last two sets. the smudge tools and erasers. The smudge tools are capable of far more than the name implies. They're very useful for softening edges and quick, effective blending. I've created a large variety of erasers because they're just as versatile as brushes. The natural-looking erasers are especially important when you want a traditional look to your work, because nothing ruins the effect more than a hard, round, digital-looking brush. Now, I want to stress that it's very important that you set shortcut keys for the smudge tool, mixer brush, and eraser so that you can rapidly switch back and forth between them. It feels like having multiple tools in one hand, allowing for swift editing. And once you get familiar with these brushes, you'll find that many can be used in combination with each other for some very satisfying effects. Alright, there's far more I could reveal, but that covers the essential information that you need to get started. I think you'll have fun exploring this brush pack, and I'm certainly enjoying them with my own work, so I look forward to seeing what you create with them. There is just one last tip I'd like to share, which is related to stylus pressure. Now, this is not required for these brushes, but it's a trick that I recommend to all digital artists who want to reduce the strain on their drawing hand. Open up your pressure curve settings of your stylus. I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro. I like to bump the upper right notch over a little to the left, like so. What this does is it simply reduces the amount of pressure required to reach full pressure output. That way you won't have to press down so hard, but you still get the full range of control. If you work for hours at a time like myself, it can save you a lot of strain. Okay, so that's all for now. Thank you for watching and enjoy the brushes.